Mr. Miles is absent. Mr. Malvesto and myself. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published if there's no changes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes of the April 12th, 2011 meeting. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 6 is the approval of bills, vouchers 12982 through 12986 in your packet. If we have no questions or comments on it, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Mr. Kent, do we have a second? Mr. Valvesto. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7 is the review of statement of revenues and expenses for April 2010. This will not require a vote, only a receive and file. If there's no questions, if there are any questions, please bring them forward. Hearing no questions, we'll receive and file. Item number 8 is the Treasury Report, April 2011. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Malvesto. Do we have a second?
You need a second, Mr. Chair?
I'm looking for a second, yes.
I'll second.
Mr. Bozak. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 9 is the manager's report. Barry?
Good evening. Got this. Okay, here we go. The first item on the manager's report is just an update on MS4 stormwater audit. Just to give you a brief history, back in 2003, the Alliance of Downriver Watershed was formed. It's made up of the combined downriver, which is us, the Ecorse Creek watershed, and the Lower Huron River watershed. These 3 units make up the Alliance for Downriver. It includes 25 cities and townships in the area, 1 school district. Groseville Township, it nested the school district in this town, so the school district comes under our watershed alliance here. This has been permitted since 2003. What we do in this process is we monitor our stormwater discharges into the river and in streams and ditches in the township. We locate existing illicit discharges if we have them, and if we do find an illicit discharge, meaning that we found sewage or something in a stormwater system, we are required by the DEQ to eliminate these.
Very good. Look close to your mic, please.
We're required by the DEQ to eliminate these discharges. We have found a couple of them here in the last few months, and we have eliminated them. We do this via dye testing. We go into certain areas of the community. We put dye in suspected residences that we feel are not connected to the proper sewer. And we have found 2, and we've repaired those. These are taken care of at Groseville Township's expense, but we've eliminated 2. We still have an ongoing program where, as time and money permits, we will continue to look for more of those. This is the first time that we've had an actual audit where the DEQ comes to the township and they sat with myself, Lorinda, and Brent from the CE Rains Company as our consultant. They were here for 2 days. They check our paperwork, and I mean, we have reams of it. It's very detailed. They ask a lot of questions. They are concerned in certain areas that we have a public education program in place. They're very emphatic about that. And as you can tell by driving the community, especially Macomb Street, you'll see catch basins that have a fish on them. They're actually on the frame of the catch basin itself. Those are placed down there to educate people that don't dump anything down in this sewer that could contaminate the rivers and streams, because it is going to go directly to the river. We have quite a few of those around town. We have pamphlets that we hand out. We've done public website information. So these are the kind of things they check, and like I say, they're very detailed. They want to check our facilities. I had to take them down to the DPS garage and show them the area down there, show them documentation that we tested all our sewers within the building to make sure that they go into the sanitary sewer rather than the storm system. Very, very comprehensive. And at the end of Friday, we were all happy that it was over. We haven't received any report yet, but at the end of Friday, they always do a summary of the audit. And other than we had a few items that we have to furnish them information on, but I think overall, I think we're going to get a rather favorable audit. So just to give you an idea how that operates. It is expensive to the township to comply with these types of issues. Myself personally, I don't always agree with them, but it is something that we're required by the state of Michigan to do. So if anyone has any questions.
I have none. Basically, it's more of a procedural and paperwork audit?
It's procedural. On an annual basis, we have to monitor and test those outfalls physically. We have to go and take water samples from these outfalls that go into the river, have it tested, and if there's any bacteria in them, fecal coliform or anything like that, that test has to be documented and submitted in an annual report that we report to the DEQ.
Do we receive any funds?
No. None. That was one of my questions to her when she was here doing the audit. She asked me what they could do for us. I just said send money.
Pay for it. And do we receive any fines if we don't comply?
I don't think there's, I suppose if the violation was severe enough, we could. In our audit, I don't see anything like that happening. There may be, and I could be wrong, but throughout the audit, I didn't see anything that we were in violation of. I think they may have some recommendations that they may pass down to us, but I don't see anything coming in.
There's no fine structure in place at this time, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, there isn't.
Okay.
All right, item number 2 is, if you recall, this dual water meter for irrigation systems. We have discussed this at the commission level at quite length over the last 2 or 3 years. The commission put a subcommittee together that was made up of Mr. Posiask, Mr. Miles, Mr. Kent, myself, and Lorinda to research dual meters in houses for the purpose of irrigation. After a couple of meetings of the subcommittee, you'll see on page 28 of your packet the rules that we are going to establish for meter irrigation systems for your home. And to summarize this, we are requiring, you can't have dual meters in your home. There are not too many communities that are allowing that anymore. On Grosse Ile, if you want to water your lawn without paying the sewer fee, you have to have a separate tap onto the main and a separate meter outside. So it's not in the home where there's the possibility of a cross connection taking place and irrigation systems backflowing into the potable water. So that basically on page 28 is what we're going to implement. On page 27, there's a fee structure set up that we're also using as an example. This example uses an 8-inch water main being tapped, and it shows the different size taps and the amounts that would be required as a fee to tap into the system. I contacted Mr. Look, the township's attorney, to get his opinion on whether this should be a rule or whether it should be an ordinance. And he just got back with us on Friday, and he would recommend that we actually make this a part of our water ordinance. He said it would simplify everything. He said even if we left it as a rule, it would have to be approved here at the commission level and still get township board approval. And I thought if we're going to have to do that, we may as well make it a part of a water ordinance and adopt it as such. I think at the same time, if the commission decides to go along with this, we would probably also add some other things in our ordinance at that time requiring different things to take place as far as when you water and when you don't, because of the structure that Detroit wants us to eventually implement for reducing our peak flows from the city of Detroit. So this is actually just addresses the meter systems, but there will probably be some other changes as well.
When do you anticipate that'll come before the commission?
If the commission wants me to proceed with putting the ordinance together, we will start doing that, and I could probably have it back to the commission possibly ready to adopt in June or July.
Are you going to review this with the same subcommittee?
Yes. Yeah, once we put the ordinance together, I'll organize a subcommittee meeting. We'll review it and move it forward from there.
Okay, because it'll have to go from here to the township board.
That's correct.
That's an ordinance.
Yes. Any questions regarding that?
Well, Vera, just a clarification. What's always been a problem for the homeowner is trying to figure out what the payback period is. So if you look at these rough estimates on page 27, I guess it is, the rough estimates show a number between, including tap fees, parts, and total, between $1,300 and $3,600. So you don't want everybody running into the Township Hall Monday and go, we've got separate meters, because the payback period, first of all, it's difficult to figure out. Secondly of all, there's a substantial cost there. So everybody should be aware of that, and that's always been the tiger in the tank for a separate tap fee. It's always been that.
Yes.
It's never been different.
And you're right, exactly. The payback period would be a long period of time. You would have to do considerable watering of your lawn in order to recoup the money that you're going to give up by not having to pay the sewer charge. The sewer charge is $2.18, I think, per 1,000 gallons of use. So you take that $2.18 and divide it into this, and you've got to use a lot of water.
The estimated cost you have on here also does not include things like backflow preventer and then yearly inspection of the backflow preventer, which is another $150 to $300 depending who does it.
Right. And that is part of the, on page 28, that is part of it, item number 7. That's an actual requirement. It says at the beginning of each year, a $50 re-inspection fee will be charged. If an inspection cannot be made due to lack of access to the premises, the sewer service rates will be charged on both the domestic and the secondary meter. So there is a fee.
But that's our fee, isn't it?
We charge that to the resident.
But we do not certify the backflow
No.
preventers. You have to have a licensed plumber doing that.
Right, and that certification will have to be given to us by the resident when he has it certified by
Right.
his plumber.
So we can just throw another $300 on there.
Yeah,
Mr. Sedlak,
yes, sir.
how many requests have you had for secondary meters in the township since you've been here?
I can count them on one hand.
How many have in fact gone all the way and haven't put in?
I could be wrong, but we don't have more than 2 or 3. To my knowledge. I can get you that number if you want it, but there's just,
No,
there's very
it's a matter of
few.
being on the fingers of one hand or 1,000.
Yeah,
That's the kind of thing that I was looking for.
right. No, there's very few that do have them. There's a few that do. That's it for me, sir.
I'm sure this will bring some discussion at the, when it finally gets to the township board, I'm sure it'll get some discussion
I'm sure.
from the residents. You through?
I'm through.
You done? All right. The next item is a discussion item. It's printed as what do we do about our roads. And if you'll take a look at page 29, Bill Kostick and Barry have put together just an information page, and I don't expect any action to be taken, but I think within the next month or so, we're going to need to take some action, because if we're going to get anything on the November ballot, we have to get the verbiage in place, and I'm not sure, but I think it's around the 1st of June. I'll check on that. But one of the options, of course, is the November presidential election. Do we go back to the voters, and if we do, with what? And how do we educate the voters for what we're asking for? November 11th, go back to the voters for the essential services of $300,000 a year for a 5-year period. That $300,000 covers our snow removal, general maintenance, I believe some roadside maintenance, if I'm not mistaken,
Dust control.
and crack sealing and dust control. I'm not even sure that has crack sealing on it, does it, Barry?
I don't believe it does. I mean, we talked about crack sealing, and if there's $300,000 a year there, as it stands right now, we probably could do some crack sealing each year.
Yeah, because I think our standing with dust, the two primary being dust control and priority snow removal service, I think those two items get us up right around $150,000 a year. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that covers it, yeah. The winter snow removal varies from season to season, but right now it's pretty low. And the dust controls, right now we're paying annually, and it varies on the season, but in the neighborhood of $60,000 a summer for dust control.
All right. I guess anybody have any comments about, $300,000 at today's millage rate probably is 0.5 mils, which is a lot. Maybe a little less than that, maybe 4.2 mils. And we need 150. My thought, and it's just a thought, but we need to focus on something, that I would rather go into for the actual minimal service, which would be snow removal and anything above the primary minimal services that we afford this community. We would have to come out with projects specific, like, do we collect $150,000 to crack seal the whole area? Do we collect $1.5 million to resurface a specific road or something like that? Those are just my thoughts, because, I think the general consensus is that everybody's hurting. We've cut back on just about everything we can cut back on. But if we don't get this in front of the public at every opportunity, when these funds run out, we don't want them saying, well, why didn't you tell us? Or why didn't you give us the opportunity to do something about that? And this money runs out in 2012. So if there's any suggestions from how we should handle this from this commission, I'd be glad to entertain them or listen to them.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I've worked on these sorts of projects as long as I've been at Grozile. And we've had good times and bad times in roads here. Right now, we have one of our worst times. But when I first came into this operation, it was just after the recovery from being known as Pothole City. And we're heading back there through no choice of our own. We have inadequate funding from the state and federal level, which is causing our problems with roads. And I think we need to recognize that it's not only roads that's a problem on a state and federal level. It is a infrastructure problem where pipelines are bursting and airports are looking for expansion monies and repairs and don't have them. And the electrical grid system, the infrastructures in all of those areas are going to take a lot of attention. So we're going to have to get innovative. But I think that as a Grozile resident, and as my personal opinion, I like to ride on a road that doesn't have a 50-50 chance of giving me a blowout before I leave. And with the structure that we have specifically set up on a state and federal level, there's just not enough money in that pie as it was divided and passed to fix this. So I think that I'm saying to the people that watch us on a commission basis, you're going to have to think about funding this, perhaps at the expense of something else. We're going to have to take our priorities and take a good hard look at them as a township and decide what is more important to us, good roads or something else. And I think that's the avenue that people will find the least distasteful, and that's my opinion.
Thanks. Mr. Modesto, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, I remember back in 69 and 70 when we were Pothole City, and I remember the extent that the township went through to repave all these roads. And yes, we are getting very close to that today. The value of our homes are going to deteriorate. We're going to attract less new families onto this community, which means it's going to affect our school system. So yes, it will affect other things besides just the township itself. We need to do something, and we need to get it in front of the voters. I wish I had a better idea, but it's that important that it needs to be put on the ballot. We need money to repair our roads, and we are not going to get money from the state or the county to assist us in that. So it's going to affect our quality of life and the value of our homes on this, as we don't know it today.
John, you've been through this a number of times. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's always a question of balance. And that's always the problem. So there's never enough money to go around. That's a question of balance. Some of the things you have to look at with the home valuation, Tom's very correct, and a poor entrance has poor curbside appeal. On the other hand, we need to take a look at what the other communities are doing with respect to their cost of living in those communities for purposes of taxes, water, sewer, refuse, all of those things. Because if you put yourself out of balance too far out, the fact that we're in a lakeside community might not carry the day. It's always a question of balance. Everywhere. This level, the state level, the federal government, it's always a question of balance.
Frank, you have any comments?
Well, I look at this going back to the voters for $300,000 a year, and that's going to do nothing to improve the quality of our roads here on the island. All you have to do is take a drive down East Road, down Meridian, and you can see the deterioration that's happening. The roads are humpbacked with coal patch, filling in all the potholes, and that's not going to last another winter. It seems like every winter the water gets under the coal patch and it freezes and pops it up, and we've got potholes that were larger than before. I think, it's going to be up to the voters to decide, but when people approach me about the roads, I have one comment. I just ask them, how did you vote last November? And secondly, I ask them, you better drive very slowly to look at your open space, because if you have a blowout and dent a rim, will cost you more to replace the tire and rim than it would have to vote for the road millage.
I guess my thoughts are this. We've got a road subcommittee. We've taken a look at some of the projects. In fact, we've even got some preliminary costs out for some road repairs. But I think it's imperative that we do something to at least maintain the services, not the roads, but the services that we currently maintain, and that we then put in front of the voters what it's going to cost to make the repairs that Frank and everybody's talking about, and they're going to have to decide. But as we've seen in the past millage, by putting them both together, when one fails, they both fail, and we put ourselves in a pretty dangerous position where in 2012, an 8-inch snowstorm will have this island locked until Wayne County gets here. And currently, we normally see our roads pretty well clear by the time our traffic day starts, if it's an overnight snow. So I think we need to get further into this. I think this discussion, I know Bill's got some very definite ideas about a large subcommittee, road subcommittee of residents that could actually act as salesmen to the community for education and advertising of this program. I think we should really consider the fact whether we should have call them in by neighborhoods and get their opinions or sections of the city, or request that they appear. Because oftentimes you don't even know what people are feeling, because they don't give you the input at the front end, but they certainly give you the input at the back end, which is okay. I mean, that's human nature. So I think all of these things we need to do. And John made a great point. It's all priorities. We have a ton of priorities looking at us. Now, we've made the decision as we move forward in this agenda. We made the decision to cut back our capital improvement programs to only those areas that are giving us quality of water issues, even though we know we need to expand our fire protection capacity with a large main all the way around the island. We've reduced our capital improvement expenditure plan that was in place that was somewhere in the vicinity of $15 million down to a new one that in the near future anyway, we're talking about $3 million. And that's done primarily to get some kind of a handle on the rates that we're dealing with. Again, priorities. We're studying the feasibility of water systems, and again, priorities. All of this we have to do as a community, especially a township, because there's no federal money, there's no state money, and there's no no county money. So this is all coming back to us, and it's taxation. I'll be the first to tell you that, and I think most people understand that. A lot of this stuff should be handled by different entities, and it's not being handled, but that doesn't make it any easier on us if we want to protect and preserve our communities. So this issue will come back up again. Is there anybody else that wants to comment on this?
I'd like to make one comment about, while we're on the topic of roads, and this is just informational. In the last few days, we've received a couple phone calls regarding a movement out there to try and get thoroughfare paved by special assessment. It hasn't gone anywhere yet, but I understand that there was some informational leaflets, I haven't seen one, put in people's mailboxes along thoroughfare. I received a call.
Thoroughfare Church to Horseville?
Don't really know the confines of it, but
Well, it's pretty good the other way, so.
yeah, it's obviously it's the gravel part. There's something out there right now. Don't have any details on it, but it's working somewhere.
Or at least down to, what is it, Balmoral, where the subdivisions end?
Yeah, down toward Middleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I haven't heard that either, but.
Yeah. As it unfolds, I'll keep you informed. I received one phone call and instructed the person to contact Carol if she wanted to get something going on a special assessment district, that she should start with Carol Knope. So I don't know whether Carol's received any phone calls. Lorinda received a call also regarding information about special assessment.
Okay. Well, I plan on bringing something back to this commission with regards to some kind of an action in the November ballot. When Bill Costick gets back, we can review some of his thoughts with regards to citizens groups and the direction the Roads Committee wants to take, the Roads Subcommittee. Is that Roads Subcommittee still intact and valid?
I believe it is, yes.
Who's on that? Do you know right offhand?
I know Gordon's on it, Wally's on it. We haven't got together in quite a while, but I know Gordon and Wally are on it. Frank, are you on that?
I do not recall.
Well, I think that Delphi was on it,
Yeah, he was.
and I would suggest that maybe we get Tom Novesto to participate in this, to replace Delphi on that commission, if he has the time and effort.
That's
I'd
fine.
be willing to, yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Sure.
As far as getting involvement of the residents in the township here, would it be improper or unwise possibly to use the Grosio website and do a link and use an informal questionnaire to test the water, to see where the residents would be in regards to millages for maintaining and repairing our roads? Would that be...
I know we have the capability to do that. We can ask Ted, perhaps,
Yeah,
to
we can.
see what he thinks about setting that up.
I could look into that and see what it would take to set something.
We'd have to put-
You're talking like just put a questionnaire out there that people answer some questions, or
There are some sites where you can go on and do a questionnaire. Get a link to that site. Obviously, it wouldn't be official because it wouldn't be a vote, but it would certainly
Sure.
test the waters and see where the residents are in regards to this.
we'll check into it.
And if nothing else, it would start
Sure.
getting the word out, getting the ball rolling.
We'll
I just-
look into it. Let you know at the next commission meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we'd have to move on that quickly, because I think, I'm not sure, but I think June's the deadline
Deadline for November
June.
election.
to get something. Yes, go ahead, Walt.
One more comment. If you come up with 6 groups or 60 groups of 60 people, I suspect that they're all going to tell you that our roads are bad. That's a safe bet. I don't know that we need to interrogate them to discuss the condition of the roads, but I do think that there is merit in figuring out what ends they wish to go to make these roads better.
Sure.
And so let's not waste our time asking them the obvious question. Let's ask them for the obvious answer. And second comment is that we sit here as a committee and as a subcommittee, as a road committee, and we really beat this thing up, rightfully so. But I still think we've got to get up and talk to people in the state and in the federal government and make them get involved with us. We are so far listening to, we don't have any money, we don't have any money, we don't have any money. But we're going to get back in their faces and start saying, we don't have good roads. We don't have good roads. We have to fix our roads. You have to help us. So I'd like to volunteer to take on working toward a relationship with Wayne County and going further, a relationship with the state DOT. They're the funding mechanism for Wayne County. I know some people there, and I'd like to help by poking them in the ribs a little bit and making them talk back to us, making them painfully aware that we, just like every other community in this state and in this county, have bad roads. And yeah, we only have 11,000 people, but our roads are just as bad as those with those in 50,000.
That's right.
I want to be prodding, okay, on a federal and state level, and I think I can do that.
Well, I know you've been a thorn in my side for a long time, so I'm sure you can do great on the state level. And I would certainly encourage you.
Thank you for
do
that,
that.
and be prepared.
All right, thanks, Wally. All right, we're going to move off.
I have another
Go ahead.
question for Barry. When you're talking about special assessments vis-à-vis roads in general, it's a different process. So if I were a person today that lived on a gravel road, thoroughfare, who do I go to in the township to obtain the written document to explain the procedure? We don't need to go through those tonight, but there's a way to do it, and it's separate and distinct from the other road situations we're talking about. It's easy to confuse them when you're watching on television, you're unfamiliar with the process. So who is that person?
I would direct them to Carol Canope.
Okay. And then there's a procedure that's in writing that
Yes.
explains special assessments, right?
There absolutely
And the
is.
number of people in an area that have to agree before it goes forward. And then after the assessment estimates, then the people must agree again before things go forward. Is that right, basically?
That's correct.
Okay, that's enough. That's all I wanted to know.
Thanks, John. That's good information, and we'll move that forward. All right. We're going to move on from this particular topic and get into the action items. Action item number 1, I'll entertain a motion for action item number 1, which is the 2011-2012 capital improvement for water and sewer. Somebody like to make the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, that Wally, Frank. Basically, what we're looking at here is we have East River to Horse Mill, Ferry to Horse Mill is the $1.5 million project. We've got Malmo, West River to Thoroughfare. These two particular projects, we're dealing with some water quality issues, especially on the second project. And the third project, obviously, is the old interceptor sewer rehab. Now, that particular project was the funds, the override funds, or the overrun funds that were required to tunnel the interceptor, which runs all the way from Park Lane, Horse Mill area, all the way to right at the Meridian middle or grade school area. There was an overrun on that project, and the cost of that overrun was paid out of DPS and sewer funds, retained sewer funds for catastrophic event for the sewer plant. And so we've already started the paperwork to do a bond for a total of $6 million. $3 million will pay back the money that's already been spent for this overrun on this project, and the other two items are self-explanatory. Is there any other questions on this? Barry?
Yes, sir.
East River water main, you had that scheduled since the Free Bridge went down for repair, right now.
Yes, in fact, you're right, Frank. The first year that we actually planned to do that project was when the bridge went down, and then we shelved it for that year. So it's been out there for quite a while.
Been about 4 years now since then.
Yes. And we took bids on this project May the 3rd. And the bids are being tabulated right now by the engineer, but we have a low bid right now of like $1.2 million for this project. So it's within the budget amount that we had. In fact, I thought the price was rather reasonable. I think our original estimate for replacement was $2.3 million.
Yeah, it was.
And that stretch of East River has been one of our worst areas for water main breaks.
It is. It's one of our worst areas, and what we're also doing along there is we're replacing an old 6-inch line with a 12-inch.
Yep.
And the goal was, and has been long before I came here, was to get a 12-inch perimeter line around the entire island. And this is just one more link in the chain that's going to help achieve that.
Good.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The second one is a stormwater management resolution, Township Board recommendation. This is going to be a recommendation of the Township Board. Will somebody make the motion, please?
So moved.
We have a motion by Frank. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Modesto. Basically, this is a motion to recommend to the Township Board to authorize the annual community resolution accepting long-term maintenance of the stormwater management system within the Township of Grosse Seal. Barry, you want to give us some details on it?
Sure. The summary of the explanation is on page 37 in your packet from the CE Rains. But basically what this involves is, and we haven't had any in quite some time, but any new development that comes to Grosse Seal is subject to stormwater retention. I can think of a couple right now that we have on the island. One of them is Wyandotte Woods. There was a chamber put at Potawatomi and Thoroughfare when that development was put in place. Save on Drug has one. Those are two that I'm aware of. But in recent years, these are things that have been put in place to collect sediment and silt in private systems before it gets into the township storm system. So whenever a project comes to Grosse Seal Township for review, these systems have to be installed, and they're reviewed at that time by our township engineer. They're installed. Right now, we have to get Wayne County approval for these installations, and what Wayne County is doing is to speed up the process when this happens, is they're turning over the responsibility of those collection systems to the township, and we have to be responsible for them. It's part of a process that we go through. When we permit a project to take place, whoever the developer is or the company that's handling these things, they have to furnish us with a statement that they will maintain that system. And then we monitor that periodically to make sure that it's happening, and they have to document that to us also.
All right, just for my clarification, this has nothing to do with the existing Wayne County drains within this community, does it?
No, it does not.
Because we have a couple of issues where we're going to be challenging Wayne County to fix or at least pay for the repairs of some of their...
No, these are strictly site stormwater issues. And like a good example is Save on Drug. They have one buried.
It's pretty unclear when you read this thing. And I just wanted to make sure that I knew what we were voting on.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with, like, you're talking about our smoke testing and that process there, no.
All right. Any other questions for Barry?
Yes, just a general question. I noticed that it names Barry as the representative for the township. And is there an alternate for you?
I don't think we have any listed, but we could put an alternate down. Actually...
I hope we never need it.
You will one day.
There you go. Talking retirement again.
No, I'm listed right now. Right now, I'm the licensed stormwater operator for Grosse Seal Township with the DEQ,
And that's part of the requirement.
and that's part of the requirement.
So the alternate must also be licensed.
Yes.
And do we have anyone in our
I don't
system?
think we have one right now. I think possibly Derek is, because I know Derek is on the license for the airport. But I'm sure that probably the township manager could act in that position also.
Does it require testing or certification, or just submitting a name?
I took a test. This was some years ago. Yes, I did take a test.
Well, it makes a very good point.
Okay, I'll check it out and see what we need.
You're not getting any younger.
You're exactly right.
We have somebody in the audience who's pointing at his chest.
Yeah, Joe, you're under the industrial side. I'm on the industrial. Yeah. And I think Derek is also. Yeah.
Should we name it, or should we?
Let me check into it and see what we have to come up
I'm
with.
comfortable either way.
Yeah, what Joe just mentioned is Joe is site-specific, he's wastewater treatment plant. Derek, I think, is airport-specific. I cover the township through this NPDS permitting this MS4 process. So if we do something wrong in the storm issue side, they come and look me up.
Great. Barry, the retention basins, you said that they're also for collecting sludge or sediment. So are there inspections and maintenance on those?
We inspect them periodically, and if, yes.
And who's responsible for the maintenance of them?
The owner.
The owners?
Yeah. Mhm. And during the process, when a entity comes to us and is going to build something, and it's part of the site plan review, when they design their site, that's part of the site plan review. Our engineer has to review it and approve it. And then what we do is, in this process, we prepare a document that goes to the owner that he has to sign that they will maintain this system. And periodically, they have to have it checked, and periodically, they have to furnish us with documentation that says it's okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The following, or the last action item, is our dust control bid award. Wally, would you make that motion?
I'd be happy to.
The motion is to, we have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
I'll just read the motion for those that watch on TV. Motion to recommend to the Township Board to award bid to D&D Emulsions Incorporated for dust control services for the 2011 season at the rate of 51 cents per gallon applied. As for history, it says each year the Township applies dust control on gravel roads as a part of road maintenance. In 2010, 2 applications were applied for a total of $48,806, a total of 106,100 gallons applied. This year's price is is 51 cents a gallon applied compared to last year's price of 46 cents per gallon applied. Based on last year's quantities, this translates to an increase of $5,305 for this year.
Just further information, this was a bid item. We had 4 companies that bid it. D&D Emulsions presented us with the most cost-effective bid. If anybody wants to see the plan for this process, there'll be a map available at the DPS department showing which areas are going to be included in this dust control program. Is there any other questions on this? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, we're going to move on to public comment. Mr. Supervisor, you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mr. Vanos. Yeah, well, I had some comments I wanted to make, but the first thing I have to say is I get nervous when I get a call from Chief Murdoch after hours. Just got one not long ago, but our fire and rescue, some guy's boat sank south of the toll bridge. Our guys pulled him out. He was, obviously the water's about 50 degrees there, not a long time of useful consciousness, so they got him out in time. He was coherent when they got him to the hospital and expected to do well. So, we all need to know that, but I can't thank those volunteers enough. But which will be my segue into this group of volunteers. Always at Marathon Township meetings, public services, the water delivery takes a beating, but you people, this commission, has more impact on a day-to-day basis on the quality of life of every resident, whether they know it or not or willing to admit it, clean water, toilets flush, safe roads, and you run, and this is based on some talks I've had with Ann, you run a tight commission, you account for every dollar, and you have an exemplary capital improvement program. You have prioritized what you want to spend money on, what the results will be, what the residents will get for their dollar invested, if they choose to investigate what you're doing. But this is, with board help, of course, I intend to apply to the rest of the cost centers on the island an objective-based budgeting. You've set your objectives, you've set your priorities, we know how you're going to spend the money. Every other cost center on this island needs to be operating the same way to allow us in charge of the budget to allocate the funds where they're going to do the most good, and the rest will defer. Because as we pointed out numerous times last night, we don't have the money anymore. We've got to spend every nickel wisely, consider everyone an investment, and what doesn't have to be done will get deferred until better times or there's a better option. So I intend to use public service, your approach to budgeting, your approach to prioritizing as an example for the rest to follow. I want to thank you for your leadership on this. Again, you spend probably more money than anybody else on the island. Everybody's better off for it. So thanks for the leadership, thanks for the example, and everybody else is going to be given the same example to follow. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Joe, you got anything? You got anything you want to add, Joe? You all set? I've just got a few brief comments. As you know, we've been dealing for the last 5 or 6 years with a huge project, with a sewer rehab, with the sewer plant rehab, with the retention basin. When we got all done, the whole system it resolved a lot of problems. It resolved a lot of the surcharging problems throughout the island, but in turn created some problems. The basic problem it created was that all of a sudden we became system efficient, probably more than the plant can handle, which caused us to take a look at the reason we're getting a lot of the inflows. As you know, we went through a lot of smoke testing, we went through a lot of investigation and TVing and investigative work to find out why we are getting so inundated in these plants. We're under a ACO with the DEQ that's penalty driven, that we have to come up with some fixes and some answers in a specified time frame. We took a good look at this. Became very concerned because we put an awful lot of money into this project, and I wasn't real confident that continuing to just throw money at this problem was the way to go. But we needed to meet this ACO requirement because it's driven by the DEQ. So Bill Kostick and myself, took a good look at it, and we visited an engineering company up in Farmington that has created, and I'm not going to get into the technicals of this thing, and had them take a look at what we plan on doing. We have budgeted $500,000 to repair our infrastructure with inflow. After talking to our engineers, we're not sure after we spend that $500,000 whether our problems are solved or not. So we're probably coming back to the commission and to the township board requesting the authority to go forward to the DEQ to request an adjustment to the ACO to where we do some monitoring and testing on the first side of it, which would be step one, and move the repairs that we've scheduled to do down to the third part of it, so that we're all confident that if we put $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million into this problem, we're putting it in the right place. Some of their concerns were, even if we put 500,000 or $1 million into it, should we be putting it into retention? Should we be putting it into plant expansion? Or should we continue the way we're going to tighten up our system? That question will be known if we take the new approach where we do the flow models and the studies on the front side to actually determine what our problem at this point is. We knew what it was before, and we spent $40 million to fix it, but the fix created problems that, with the exception of Joe, who, by the way, warned me halfway through this project, that, we're going to fix this system, and I'm going to get more water than I can handle. And that's exactly what happened. We got more water than we can handle. And the system became much more efficient than the plant, and it became much more efficient than our ability to store. So we're looking at make sure that the proper approach, and this will be coming back, because we're going to have to get authorization from the Township Board. We're going to have to get authorization from this commission to move forward and amend this ACO so that we know, everybody knows, and they're comfortable that we're spending the money in the right place. And I thank Mr. Kostick. I mean, he's taken the lead on this thing. He's as frustrated as I am. And we had a great meeting. We spent a half a day with these engineers, and these people were talking way above my head. But when I left there, I understood exactly what they were talking about. And if we're going to spend $500,000, maybe the first 25 or 30,000 of that should be to ensure that the other 425 or 475,000 gets spent in the right place. So that's just that's where we've been going. There's been some questions and comments about the water treatment plant in our study moving forward. We've had some communications with Trenton, if I'm not mistaken, Barry, you can correct me at any point, that they were not very successful in their communications with the Detroit Water Board in getting out of their contract, which probably does not end this project, but what it does do is slide it backwards, which would put us in a position of buying water on a month-to-month basis along with Riverview if they choose not to sign a contract with the city of Detroit. We still haven't got the answers from the city of Detroit as to whether or not a storage facility at this time will be self-funding. By that I mean if we spent $3 million or $4 million for a water tower, will the savings that we make in reducing our costs by 30%, was 30%, we don't know what it is right now. Because the last thing we, the last thing we want to do is have to come to the residents and say, your water bill's going up. I mean, they already know that. And so those numbers are with Detroit. We're waiting for a response for them. So that's not a dead item at this point. At some point in time, if we go with our own water treatment plant, or even if we stay with the city of Detroit moving forward, which I don't know which we're going to do, or if we should choose to maybe review the possibilities of going with Wyandotte, who has their own water facility, we may be looking at water storage in the near future, but the numbers just are not here, and I can't tell the taxpayers or the users on Grosse Ile that I can put this thing in without costing them money. And if I have to do that, then it needs to be a community input project. If I can guarantee them that this is the right thing to do and it's not going to cost you any money, then I think this board, the township board, can move forward. But if it's going to cost them money, we're going to have to ask them, and it may be just an upfront thing, where 10 years down the road it'll save us money, but we're going to need their input before we move forward. So, all right, that's all I have. Mr. Kostick's not here. Wally, do you have anything you want to add?
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Riley?
Just along the lines of your comment a minute ago, there's an interrelated situation that comes to bear on the price of water, and there's so many inputs that are out of our control and geographically not located within the boundaries of our community, that it makes a measured approach most difficult at best. And that's the problem, and that's not a criticism of the people here. That's what we have to deal with. And I have nothing further.
Thank you, John. Frank, do you have anything?
Nothing, sir?
Gordy's not here. Tom, you have anything you want to add?
No, nothing.
And I have nothing else. With that, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
We have a motion